Good evening, my dear Trump fellows from America and Europe. Merry Christmas, and I want to give a brief update of where we are now with the elections and possible path for victory for our beloved President Trump. I know that there are a lot of people out there that are very concerned about the electors being already selected for Biden 2 days ago, so I thought that I would lay out some instances of what I think may be unfolding. First one is that 2 days ago in several states the electors were selected in the House of Representatives of their respective states. Basically, they were given ballots and they voted in the Electoral College and selected Joe Biden. But in many of these cases, they allowed the Republican electors to vote as well as so-called alternate electors. In 2000, during the Bush-Gore dispute over the presidency, Florida allowed both sets of electors to cast ballots. That way, there was a judicial decision on the road, then they could seat those opposite electors for the opposite party, and the president would be elected and allowed to use these electoral votes. So it seems more of confusing, I know, but believe me, it's just formality. What's gonna happen is that on January 6th, all of the casted electoral votes 2 days ago will be pulled out from the sealed envelopes and they will be given to Mike Pence, and as he is the president of the Congress, will oversee it in a joint session of Congress, which will be the House of Representatives and the Senate. At a time as each state's delegation vote is called in the Electoral College, if someone of the state or even of another state files basically an objection to that state's electors and it's able to state a valid ground for that state's electors should not be seated, then what happens is that if it happens a second time, even by a member of the Senate or of the House of the Representatives, then both chambers are forced to go to a closed session where they try to come out with an agreement for the electors for those disputed states. If, however, they don't come up with a kind of resolution, then when the session is opened back up, the Senate will vote, and in the event of a tie, Vice President Mike Pence, as the President of the Senate, would break that tie. Regarding the House of Representatives, each state is allowed one vote per delegation. So the delegation is typically a representative of the legislature of that state. So, for example, Michigan's delegation is Republican delegation because their legislature is Republican. And as we all know, there are 30 states with Republican delegations. So, taking into consideration these facts, the vote in the House could be 30 to 20 in favor of President Trump. And the Senate with Mike Pence is a tiebreaker, which means President Trump would win the elections. That's one scenario. The second scenario is that if the Trump campaign has the opportunity to go in front of the Supreme Court and can give proof that the Biden campaign or Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were complicit in cheating in the elections and they were aware of voter fraud, the Supreme Court has the ability to basically disqualify them. So those electoral votes for Joe Biden will be cast out and the Republican electoral votes will be seated for President Trump. So these are the two possible scenarios or paths. Right now, there is a case in Pennsylvania. So, if the Supreme Court decides in favor of Trump, then he will get those electoral votes from Joe Biden, which will give him an additional 20 electoral votes. But as we know, there are litigations also in Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. And because of the fact that these 6 states casted alternate electoral ballots, those votes will be transferred to the Republican electors and they will be allowed to go in the joint session of Congress on January 6th, and the president will once again be elected. So there are a lot of paths to victory for Donald Trump. He now has 232 electoral votes, and with Pennsylvania and Wisconsin there is 30, which means that he has 262. And if they add Arizona, which has 10 electoral votes, Trump has 272, so he would win. So there are a lot of paths, not to mention the independent lawsuits of Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood, and it's very difficult to say how will this play out right now. And there is also a third scenario with the executive order of President Trump signed back in 2018, which says that if there is any evidence of foreign interference in the presidential election presented by the Homeland Security and National Intelligence Services, the President of the United States can take that report in 45 days from the election and make a decision based on the executive order, which could lead him to invoke the Insurrection Act and declare martial law, which basically means that the army is going to have supreme legal power above all. This basically means that Donald Trump can restore order with the help of the army. He can take in the military in the disputed states and do a full forensic audit of the ballots that were casted in those states, and in case of fraud proof of the used Dominion system or interference from China or Germany regarding the ballots, he can restore order. Or he could also call for a new vote in those states with the supervision of the army, of the military. So Trump has a lot of options if he declares martial law. Abraham Lincoln invoked the Insurrection Act and gave power to the military to arrest and imprison people for 4 years. I know a lot of people are discouraged right now, but as you could see, there are so many paths for victory for President Trump. There are a lot of options in court, or there are a lot of options legislatively. I think that the best thing we can do is to take a deep breath and have hope that truth will prevail. I am firmly convinced that the tree of liberty will not be killed and that the government of heaven is not sleeping right now. Fingers crossed for 6th of January. Have faith and believe in justice, because we will win. Bye bye, my dear fellows, Trump fellows from America and Europe. Bye bye. Bye. Kisses.